Hey, what is up? Welcome back, Design Squad. It's been a while since I created something about Axure. We're gonna talk about conditional logic. It's something you must master if you're using Axure. Whatever you can think of in web app space or mobile app space, whatever you experience or other apps, chances are you can achieve it in Axure using this specific feature, and that's why it's so important to master it. And I covered it here and there, you know, I kind of like peppered it across different use cases. For example, if you go back into my playlist and you check how to create a login form, it definitely uses conditional logic. And what is conditional logic? It's really just telling Axure that if you do, let's say, one action and the value of certain thing is, you know, an X, do something. If the value is something, let's say Y, do something else. And so you kind of create a branching of the conditional statements. And, you know, if you're new to it, it might be a bit difficult to understand. If you're, let's say, coming from development background or you've done some JavaScript before, you would know it immediately. If you're advanced to Axure, it just might help you to freshen the memory and know exactly what I mean. And specifically today, I'm going to show you how to create, let's say, subscription form for emails. And let's say, depending on what users enter in an email, we're going to display a different message. So let's say sometimes it could be an error, or you could make a dynamic panel and have an error icon and, you know, red marker or something, or it could be a success message. I'm going to use it as a simple example. You know, it's not about how to make it per se, it's what's all around it and how to play with logic and all the statements I could go through, which you must know when dealing with the conditional statements and all the if states and so forth, you know, when adding cases. So let's jump right into it. Right off the bat, I'm just going to define a couple of things here. So I'm going to define the input field, which is, you know, where our data is going to go. So let's say input data. And then I'm also going to define the output, which is going to be, let's say, output, say, message or something like that. So I just remember what it is. But as you can see, one is where we're going to go in and we're going to check it. And another one is where our result is going to go. You know, you could also attach any other event, but we're just going to stick with simplest thing so that we can cover most ground. And next is really in Axure, you want to have a trigger. You want to check that something happens. You want to activate something. So trigger must be there. And in this case, it's just a button, which is basically subscribe. I'm going to give it a name as well, just for a good measure, which is going to be, let's say, CTA or something like that, call to action. Now, if I'm going to go and add new interaction, I could just say something simple like take the information from text field and display a message here that that text field is okay. So on click or tap, I could say set text, select output because we're working backwards. And I could say set text, or I could, you know, I could just hand type it if I want to. So I could just say something XYZ, or I could even go ahead and select a value of a text. So let's say text on widget would be that, or I could even go and select a function. Let's say if we want to make it fancy, and I could say your email XYZ got enrolled to our list, thanks, something like that. And here I could add a variable, the local one, like so, lvar text on widget, and just select our input. And as you can see, it's a local variable, meaning every time I activate it, it's just going to assign that lvar the input value and just display it there. And I'm just going to insert that lvar like so. As you can see, it's all syntax. You have to keep it that way. It's double brackets around it and keep it case sensitive. Click OK. And that's the simplest way to, let's say, just assign that value of custom message to this text field. And it's going to work as a basis for this video. And I'm just going to say hello at vaexperience.com. Don't spam me. Subscribe and boom. As you can see, immediately I got this captured. Very simple. I'm sure you knew it. If not, amazing that you now found out how to do it. It's very static, very linear approach. Now, if you would want to check that the email is correct, let's say, That's where you would use conditional statements. That's where you would want to apply that logic. And so on click, let's say here, Axure has this enable cases. It would allow you to enter a new case. So let's say this, and even you can add logic. Newest version of Axure also explains how to do so. So you can have multiple cases, you can have if and else elements, you can go ahead and just go crazy with it. And I'm just gonna click OK. And here you see it's one case. And if I would add logic, so let's say if an email contains an @ sign, run this code, then I can also copy this and say if an email is, I don't know, .com, add different message with adding logic. And so I'm gonna just delete one for now, and then we're gonna dive deeper into the logic. Now we're gonna go crazy with it. And some of you commented on some of the videos to explain exactly what's this about. What is the case building? How do you condition build in, the statements, which makes sense to you? How do you target different bits? And let me show you exactly how. So by default, you're going to see this view. And here you are able to select, first and foremost, give your case a name. So it could be something like email sub case 1. And then you can also first and foremost select if you want to match all these conditions, all these row statements, or you just want to match any of them. If we want to match that this is an email, I'm gonna walk you through every single option here, every single property to select. The simplest one is value. Value is basically the easiest thing to check. So you can say if value equals, I don't know, subscribe, click OK. And in this case, it's selecting the subscribe on the button itself. So that's not really a best example, but you can have a selector of, let's say, what do you want to do with it. So it does not equal, is less than, greater than, if it's a number, let's say, you can then calculate and structure it, make a good structure, logical one. What I usually go for is either value of variable, which you can create in a global variables. You can check the length of the variable value. So again, check the actual variable. You can check the text on widget, which is what's inside that. And I can be like, let me demonstrate it. Text on widget. And select that text widget. If you select this, it's just going to leave a button. But if I select, let's say, input data, which is our that email form, equals text, and I can say hello, okay, then it's going to run this. But as you can see, it's only going to be true if this is hello. So let me show you. So let's say if I say false here, nothing is going to happen. If I say hello, now it checked the condition and says your email, hello, yada, yada, yada. So we created a very simple condition. And you can then go explore every single one other bits. So for example, to tell you what it is. So let's see, text unfocused widget is basically any widget on the screen which has a focus state, which is clicked in and basically about to be entered with text. Let's see, that's the simplest explanation. Length of the widget value, you can also detect how big the panel, let's say, is. Now next, what is good to know is selected option off is basically the drop down specific selector. And so if I would have a drop down on my canvas, let's say, I could just say selected option of a drop down is equals specific option, run that statement. Simple as that. Now disabled off is basically if there are states in Axure for disabled, selected, stuff like that, you can always pre-select. And imagine if you disable something, you can then run it with it as well. So you just need to detect if something is disabled, like this button, then you would run that again. State of a panel is amazing because is selected. Sorry, I missed out on that, but it's also the selection. So let's say maybe it's radio buttons, maybe it's a specific field, something you set to select it. You can run that logic. State of a panel is amazing. So you can detect what panel of a dynamic panel is present, let's say. And to demonstrate it really quick, it could be that I have this button as a dynamic panel. And let me call it button dynamic panel, DP. And I have two states, imagine. And state 2, let's make it red really quickly. And let's say if I would select number 2 as a first state, which is an active state, which is on top, I could then go inside, just not to lose that statement, because now it's in a dynamic panel. I could just say state of a panel, automatically it's selected because it presumes that it's this specific dynamic panel, equals state 2, then run that. If it wouldn't equal, it wouldn't run, let's say. And you can also test it out, on your own, but that's basically the logic. So you can play around what's in the canvas as well. So if you know that your canvas has 20 different dynamic panels and they're always switching, you can then detect if, let's say, something swapped or something morphed on your canvas. Then you can actually say, now you can accept that email as an input field and present it as an output in this case. So it's amazing. It's really powerful. Now, visibility of the widget is also really powerful, because sometimes you have the hidden items on your canvas and they always become visible when you activate something, and maybe only then you want to select that, hey, do something about it. So let's say, imagine that I have something like, I don't know, an icon, a picture of sorts. By default, let me just give it a name. I'm gonna just hide it. Now, if my interaction states here that visibility of widget pick equals false, value false, as you can see, I'm making that logic, then it's gonna run that statement. And just to test it out, just to show you, let's say something, boom, it did run that logic. But if it's visible, so let me just untick the invisibility like so. Now it's visible on a canvas, and I run the same logic again, nothing is gonna happen. There is no error. And you can also define an error too if you want to, if that's what you're after. So let's say I could invert the same statement. I could also toggle to another if. So let's say both of them are equally true. It's really up to you how you want to do it, but basically the statement means that if this equals false, then do this, else if that equals, let's say, true, you do that. Simple as that. Once you get a hold of it, it's really easy to roll out. To continue, other bits, it's key pressed is a really powerful one. So let's say you could say, this is where you add your keyboard as a functional bit, as a manipulator to your prototypes. So let's say if you say key pressed equals key value, let's say, and I press 2. So let's say if I press 2 while clicking subscribe, it's gonna do something. Or I could do, let's say, arrow or something along those lines. Left is arrow. I just clicked on it. And then you can also do that. So you can also detect what keys people press, so that you could almost make a game in Axure if you want to with this conditional statement. You're just gonna have a lot of key checks of what's actually being pressed, what's being activated, and then what comes out of it. Next, what's definitely more of cover is cursor. And cursor is basically where I use it personally, is if it enters a space of something. So you could say, let's say, sometimes you want to activate bits only if your cursor is over a certain image or over a certain part of an image, let's say. Then you could do that. Specifically in this case, I don't know if I can demonstrate it on that, but imagine if you have a map and you have hotspots on top of it, you could add a big hotspot, which is basically one clickable area, or you could have smaller ones. And if you're over a specific area, then you make and run a specific conditional statement. It's very simple, and as you can see, it allows you to select a different area you want to, and then it's gonna work. And lastly, just to cover the condition builder, is this adaptive view. Is basically where you can select exactly what state your adaptive view is, and it's all about those responsive design bits. If you don't know how to do a responsive, rather adaptive prototypes in Axure, go back and look at my video, watch it. It's in a playlist. It's called something like adaptive views or responsive prototypes with adaptive views, I think. It's going to explain what it is, but basically once you set it up and you have multiple adaptive views, multiple breakpoints for mobile, desktop, whatever, tablet, you're able then here select that, hey, if adaptive view or let's say if I'm on a mobile device, at the moment I have only base, but if I define mobile, I can then say make this button into orange button or something like that. Whenever I click it, send out a modal rather than opening a new page. I could do it here as well, and it's quite simple too, as long as I define those bits. But this basically is how you build conditions, and Condition Builder is super powerful. You must play with it, you must experiment with it to understand exactly what you can make it. Whatever you can think of in web app space or mobile app space, whatever you experience or other apps, chances are you can achieve it in Axure using this specific feature. And that's why it's so important to master it. And you need to experiment to understand what each of these means, because I can give you an overview, I can give you a use case specifically for a specific case, but chances are your use cases are different. So do experiment. I hope this is useful. I hope it sheds some light of how to form conditions, how to use conditional logic in Axure, how to make your prototypes much more smarter. If you have any specific questions or use case I could cover, leave a comment down below. Like this video if you like it, subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so, share with a friend, and as usual, until next time.